Should be up. Yep, there we are. All right.
We're on.
We are on.
How you doing?
Pretty good. Just I'm assuming probably the same as you, but I feel, I think oftentimes when the summer hits, most I think at least in my position, I don't know if you feel the same way, but a lot of clients are, taking vacations, things like that. So things feel like they're slowing down, but then that's always like, great, it's slowing down, but that means like a million other things are picking up. So, while exciting, also just very stressful. But I am excited. I will have a booth at the annual Play Therapy conference, so I'm excited to have some things there that will be. We haven't fully unveiled yet, but will be a nice surprise for everyone. So I'm excited to show all of that in October.
And when you maybe if people aren't familiar with the conference you're talking about, maybe cue people in to you're talking about the APT, the Association for Play Therapy conference that
Hmm.
happens annually in October, and this year's in
Palm
Palm
Springs.
Springs.
Yep.
Yeah. So, so you guys are going to have a booth in the exhibit hall that is available for people to try some things out. Is that a cryptic enough statement?
Yeah. Things that I feel, you and I have talked about for years, and then now being able to, over the past, gosh, the beginning of this year, really kind of putting a lot of things just into place and just pushing forward with it. And I feel like it's definitely exciting, and things I think people will be very, very excited to try out and use, because I know that it's something that we know is desperately needed. And obviously, the pandemic, I think, sped up a lot of our thoughts that we've had for years. So,
It's very exciting.
and how are you doing?
I'm good. I just got back last night from a family vacation, and so I feel a little still in vacation mode.
Yeah, I bet.
uh, and and we actually were on a Disney cruise.
Oh, okay.
And so what that means for this part of the conversation is that when if people haven't taken them before, when you are on cruises, when you're not on land in the ocean somewhere, wherever you are, you don't have internet.
Yeah.
And so I came off the ship to over 2,000 emails,
I can only
literally,
imagine.
not joking or exaggerating at all. And so there have been a lot of happenings that I don't have. I don't have my finger on the pulse of them in the way that I normally would. And so one of the things that happened that we plan to talk about today is one of the things that happened while I was away was the finally the announcement about the Apple VR headset. And I mean, there's been so much speculation, so many conversations about it. Everybody knew it was going to be expensive, but what
Right.
other bells and whistles will it have, and what will be the different parts of that? And so finally, we have some more concrete information, and I haven't been able to again have the finger on the pulse of that in the way that I normally would. But when I would get to say a port or something like that, and I would turn on my phone, I'd get like 5 million notifications on LinkedIn and all of that. That is a place that I often go to get. It used to be Twitter, but I'm a little less inclined toward Twitter these days.
Yeah.
Uh, but I was able to at least get some basic information about what was going on with this Apple headset. So I'm excited to talk about it. I saw a really interesting, and I'm gonna try to find it. when I stop and let you have a say. uh, but I thought I saw a really interesting post by somebody who was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not interested in this Apple headset. And I read what it was like a repost, right? So
Mhm.
somebody else posted some statement, and then this person reposted it with their own commentary on top. And so when I read the original one, my response was so different from the person who had reposted it. And I thought, that's really interesting that my perspective was so drastically different. And this person who reposted it with this view of no way for this Apple headset was is somebody who's in the industry. It's not like they are anti-tech or something, and I can understand how we might differ in some things. They are pro and actually develop in this space. And so it was a nice little glimpse into some of the the conversation that's going on in general
Mhm.
in in XR technology in general, and then specific to this Apple headset. So I'm curious what your thoughts are, and while you talk, I will both be listening and also trying to find this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have so many thoughts. I think one, just from an engineering, standpoint, like it's incredible, what they were able to do. And I know that the cost is pretty high, and you know, especially when you're comparing it to like an Oculus and things of that nature. But I think that the context is important. I mean, essentially, they have like two computer chips like sitting inside of the headset, with one of them being a brand new chip that they've created. um, I definitely can see, where people are saying like it is super expensive, but I think that that's also a very good thing, just because that starts the race now, right? It starts the now you're going to have companies. You got okay, this is where the majority of headsets are at, and this is where Apple has now dropped their headset. So how do we get closer to the specs and the engineering that the Apple headset provides, but keeping it a lower cost for consumers. So it's I
It's
think that
funny
that's
to me
great for
though.
us.
I think it's funny though, not funny, haha, funny, interesting, funny. Not my particular phone, because I have an older one and whatever, and I got a deal with the plan and the thing and all the stuff. But there are people who paid $1,200 for their phone,
Hmm.
and and so it's just interesting to me that everyone I don't have $3,500 just be like, here, poof,
Right.
like, I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. It is a ton of money. It is absolutely an investment.
Yeah. I think that's
But
where
it's not
it's so early on, that I think we have to wait to see, what they're developing with like their ecosystem. And so
absolutely
that's where I'm excited, because like when you're saying with the phone, the first thing that came to my head is like, okay, before you unveiled this, you just showed your new Macs, which are like $1,200. So what what are you telling me about this headset that I could essentially almost get three Macs, for the price of this headset?
right. And how quickly is the technology going to advance?
Right.
Is it going to be like they're just about to come out? They came out Quest, so they came out with they came out with the Go, then they came out with the one, the two. Now they're coming out with the three. In
Hmm.
between there, between the two and the three, they came out with the Pro. And the Pro initially was $1,500.
Hmm.
Then they reduced it down to $999 or $995 or whatever the heck it was, right just under 1,000. They reduced it by $500. I ended up having a Pro because of a position I was in with a company, and they provided the Pro.
Right.
So I didn't have to purchase it. I can tell you hands down, I do not think the Pro, let me rephrase that because now there are other pros. the, the Meta Quest Pro, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it was worth the $9.99, never mind the $14.99.
Mhm.
There weren't enough advancements. There weren't enough differences. It didn't warrant. I didn't experience anything in that headset except for the shape, the
Right.
weight, shape, the way it sat on your head. I think the headband is enormously improved. But these are all things that you could have put in the next Quest.
Yeah.
Like I didn't see it had some better optics and graphics and whatnot, but again, not $1,000 worth.
Mhm.
The value wasn't there. Now they're coming out with the three, and by all accounts that I have read about the Quest 3, is basically it's taking the good stuff of the Pro and selling it for $500.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I get excited about when when we're thinking about Apple's headset because it is, from all the reviews that I've seen, from all the people who have talked about, actually demoing it and trying it out, they absolutely love it. It seems like the only thing that, makes people hesitant is just I'm curious to see how it'll grow out because the ecosystem, we know Apple will do a great job, but right now it's still bare. And then two, just the cost in general. But from everything else, everyone said it's super smooth, fascinating in a sense that there's no controllers. So one of the things that I heard from someone who had said it's very different, because most VR headsets were accustomed to haptic controllers, where we can feel the vibrations when we're interacting. And they were talking about how it was a interesting feat that Apple has created where the user said he was able to put his hand out and essentially it was able to recognize where his hand was and have a butterfly fly and land on his hand. And he was saying like I like that, but then I also kind of miss the haptics a little bit too. Like it would have actually been really cool to feel that. So what I really love just about the unveiling of all of this is that I think that it's starting the conversation to get people to really think about this because, again, I don't think that, VR, AR, XR, any of that stuff will ever go away. And, and if anything, it's just going to grow. And the reason is because there's too much money being put into this by, big companies that, will essentially, I don't want to say force it on us, but it is going to be a non-voluntary adoption mechanism in the way that the world moves forward and a lot of it makes sense. It's just it's kind of like when the iPhone first dropped and everyone was like oh god no, and then now look at it, right? um, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just excited because I think that it's going to have a lot of companies start to have a competition and then that only helps the consumer. We're going to get better versions, cheaper versions, and but waiting and kind of weaving through all of those obstacles and trying to figure out what's best for our particular field is going to be interesting. Just because I think that there's pros and cons to both. It's almost like if we could nitpick and pull things out, we could make this like ultra best headset for us, right? But
I my head's going in so many different directions. Let me see if I can capture something coherent. So I found the thing that I wanted to talk about, but I want
Mhm,
to talk about this first. So for me, so much of this, when we're specifically talking tech, that's one conversation. We're specifically talking mental health,
mhm,
use of this kind of tech of XR, and for people who might not know, XR is an umbrella heading that globally includes virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. And for some people, like uh, Dr. Walter Greenleaf, he actually also includes things like iPads, 2D,
mhm.
mobile applications and whatnot under the XR heading. So it really depends who you're talking to and what the context is and all those kinds of things. But globally accepted, VR, AR, and MR are all under this XR heading. So when I say that, that's what I mean. But when we're talking about using XR, and I'm going to go right now by Greenleaf's definition of including also mobile apps and whatnot. If if we're talking about that in terms of the mental health arena, I think we as as I so often talk about, we need to back up and break it down. And when we break it down, we're breaking it down into what are the components here that are important for the mental health arena. And immersion and multi-sensory experiences are two of the main components to me as a clinician that I think have enormous mental health impact.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is if you're, the more your body and mind, and I'm separating those out. So I really would like to even say body, brain, and mind. And there's a differentiation between the brain and the mind here, and I'm not going to go into detail in the moment, but I have written about it quite a bit in a couple of places. So if people are interested, just reach out to me and I can give you some direction for that, or you can just research it yourself. But Dan Siegel talks about a differentiation quite a bit as well. So if we think about brain, body, and mind, and that those components of a person are believing that they are in the environment, that they are interacting with the thing, that they are, whatever that thing might be, that might be an aspect of the environment, that might be a certain character, that might be a certain task that they have, whatever it is. If they really believe in the mind, body, and brain, that they are there and doing that thing, that interaction, that there is a lot of power to that. And I've spoken about that even in terms of one of the things I didn't like about the MetaQuest Pro was that the bottom section of the headset is open.
Hmm.
For a while there was a lot of push on like augmented reality glasses. Not that they're not doing them still, but there were all these conversations happening. They seem to have quieted down. So many more people are talking about AI right now than than AR glasses. But they were like, oh, so that you don't have this enclosed thing on your head, which is the VR. And for mental health use, I actually think it's the other way around. I think the cue to the real world environment of being able to see it takes people out of the immersion of that experience, and that detracts in a lot of ways. I'm not going to say every situation, but in a lot of ways, that, in my opinion, detracts from the experience that I'm trying to have the person have from a mental health perspective. So that MetaQuest Pro that has the open bottom, it comes with two little side panels that like magnetically attach, but
Hmm.
then the bottom is still open. And then you have to pay another $50 to buy the bottom part so that you can have a headset that is closing off from the outside world. Um, there can be situations and circumstances where having the ability to remove that bottom section has value to orient somebody, for them to not be too overwhelmed. That's why they have pass through, which is that ability to go outside of your guardian. I feel like I'm just throwing out so many buzzwords here, but the guardian, for people who don't know, is the definition of the space you're using. So you define it yourself, and then if you step outside of that like bubble, if you will, that you've created, then you see a grid pattern and you can see the other parts of the world. And historically, past year's been black and white, but the Quest 3 is coming out and it's going to be in color. So that's changing and whatever, but the idea is the same, that in this defined space, I'm in the experience. Outside of that defined space, I can now see the outside world. And this can help people if they're overwhelmed, if they need a break, if whatever it might be. And I think that addresses that need and issue in a better way than having some opening in the headset. But when we're talking about these mental health aspects, what is it we really need in these experiences to be able to have the person work through whatever it is they need to work through? And in my opinion, the better your body and brain and mind believe that you're in it, the better mental health work can be done with a therapist, a trained therapist, all the competencies, all in digital play therapy, talking about the 5 C's, all the 5 C's are in place there. So with all those pieces in mind, I think you can get the best result. One of those pieces is that haptic response.
Hmm.
Because when I touch something, the haptic, for people who don't know, is like a vibration in the controllers that then indicates to you that you have interacted with something in some way, that you've touched it, that some sort of contact has been made, and there was a response to that. So that's one of the things that sort of lingers for me about this headset, is whether or not there's something important lost there. I find it hard to believe that at some point, either aftermarket, someone else will make something that's compatible, or Apple later will bring it in. But even if it were a pair of gloves, or even like, it could even be fingerless gloves, like
Hmm.
I something slim and easy to put on that doesn't feel cumbersome, or like you're uncomfortable or whatever, but something so that you could have that impact feedback. I think the haptic has a lot of value. But other than that, the specs of the Apple headset, I think, are really exciting.
Hmm.
It doesn't surprise me. It is exactly what I expected. The price doesn't surprise me at all. I don't think it's gonna go down. I think there will maybe be different bells and whistles that you can get, just like you can upgrade your MacBook if you wanted, or your phone if you wanted. You get a bigger one, a smaller one, more memory, less memory, more, whatever the bells and whistles are. I think there's the potential for that kind of price variability. But, Apple came out, their computers are more expensive, their iPads are more expensive, not than anybody, but like the general idea of it, their phones, because of the things that it can do and the ecosystem that you were
Hmm.
talking about. Um, we just don't know what all that's going to look like yet, how well it's going to play well with others. iOS doesn't play well with others
Hmm.
as far as like developing an app or something like that. They have a completely different system that fits in their own ecosystem. So what does that mean for that great game that you have, that you play on your Quest, that now you want to play on the Apple headset? How are those things going to work? Those are all very big questions. Or are we looking at yet another headset that has its own everything? So if you really wanted to do all the programs you wanted to do in therapy, you would need to have 16 different headsets with 16 different systems and different programs and ways you access them, and subscription fees and all. I mean, that's not realistic for anybody that I
Yeah.
know of. So I will I will pause to let you respond with any thoughts that you have, and then I do want to talk about this post that I saw.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I think that it is the multisensory, it's the immersion. For me, it's when we have those, experiences that are immersive, that, we talk about like learning obviously through metaphors, right? And storytelling and, first person experience.
Mm.
I mean, that you can't go any, you can't get any better than the virtual reality. I think it's interesting because I had this thought the other day and I was thinking about it in regards to immersion. And I started to wonder, just based on my own, upbringing of playing games, but also this thought came to me when I actually sat in on a coaching session that was done in a virtual space, essentially. So digital avatars and having someone present. and the company that had put it on, um, and it was it was really interesting because I was on the PC. I was not in virtual reality, and I was fully engaged. The company put it on Plutonic. I was fully engaged listening to it. I could feel the multisensory aspect of it. The VR could enhance it for sure. But what ultimately came to me with immersion was I wonder if it's also a generational thing, meaning anytime I sit down to play a game and through my experiences with sitting with younger clients, there's no shortage of immersion when it comes to a digital game. And
Absolutely.
like that's where I think like it's really fascinating to think about, kind of like just the gap with like the Oculus headset, right? Like that was always my first thing before I tried it, right? I was like, how are you going to be able to know it's VR? Like, you can just look down, like that kind of thing, right? It was kind of like when I first went to Disney California Adventure and they have those, kind of big like TV screen and they have you like go up into the ride and you're like flying through all the various different parts of like California and I'm like okay well if I just look down I can see clearly the floor like the TV in front of me like I'm not this is an immersion thing um but I think that the population growing up now is more likely to be immersed in something even if it's a digital game on a TV, even if it's a browser, more
Yeah.
so than the generation that didn't grow up with this.
I agree with you. And even when I was saying that about the headset, there's a side conversation that
Yeah,
if you drew a picture, it would be coming out the side of my head, or my mouth that popped up for me that you can get very immersed
yeah,
in something that is 2D that you don't have wrapped around your face. But I think I'll have to think this through, and maybe I'll have more to say about it in a later thing. And I think it's important that in all of these conversations that people understand that these are conversations that change with experience, with different technology advancements, with so many things. And so that's why it's important to continue to have the conversations. So I think without in-depth analysis at the moment, that the difference is that if I'm in a headset, that I have a psychological expectation that the world I'm experiencing is here. I might be looking, but I know I have this thing on my head on some level. And this is the experience I'm having. If I want to look over there, I'm looking because if I do my peripheral vision, only is going to go so far because I have a headset on. If I'm outside of a headset and I'm playing a game, whether it's on my phone or my tablet or my computer or whatever it might be, and I'm getting immersed in that, that is true immersion. It doesn't take the same multisensory, although like with a Switch, you have the haptic in the
mm-hmm.
controllers. Um, but I don't have that if I'm using my trackpad on my computer. Like I don't have the haptic response there. So it's not that all those things are mandatory in all places for there to be immersion that's going to happen. But if I'm in a headset and my psychological experience and expectation is that what I'm experiencing is here, then when I look through and I see the real world, somehow like through the bottom of the Pro or through a light gap, it's enough to take me out of the experience that I'm expecting to have, if that makes sense. Whereas if I'm playing on my computer or my Switch or whatever, the rest of the world is happening around me and I'm focused here, but my expectation is that all of that is still going to exist. Whereas when I'm in a headset, my expectation is that it's not.
Yeah. I think both are needed for like in terms of our field because I think that you know one when you're in the headset I think it's a full body experience when you're talking about like sitting at the computer sure you may have some movement with your arms and things of that nature but when you're in a headset it's a full body experience just like if you were trying any new sport or, any new environment out, it's a full body experience. Like it's the difference of like you can be engaged watching something or moving around, but when you have the headset on, it's like that experience of putting your entire body into it. So it's another level of immersion. I totally agree. I think when it comes to the both aspects in terms of mental health, sometimes we have clients or people who need to be able to remove themselves, and this is why we create this safety environment of our therapy room, right? We are trying to um, provide an environment and letting them know that this is a safe environment to express yourself. So this is different than when you're outside. So I especially know this is huge in couples therapy because we're trying to get them to understand that the therapy room is different than your like you being at home. And I think that the VR adds another element to that because for the exact same reasons that you're saying. It's like, yes, you can fully understand that you're in a different environment, but we can fully take you out of that environment and put you in a simulated, virtual environment to be able to do some of the work that is, very difficult to do in its current form in other, means. And then what I like about as you were saying, the browser, the sitting at the computer, or on your phone or things like that, that's just another level of like that to me is kind of like exposure therapy, right? It's kind of like you've done the work, you feel confident doing this, and now you're going to slowly integrate these things into your everyday, life. So I think I've, used VR in terms of helping symptoms related to, ADHD. So we would start within the virtual reality. We would look at increasing, the focus, concentration, and then once we came down, they felt comfortable. Now the work was being done outside of the VR because there were a lot more distractions going on. And so
Mhm.
we're looking at, we were able to kind of go up and down and measure, the work that they were able to do within the VR. And so I love that both can be aided, and I think that's my most favorite thing. But like you said, it can be confusing because there are so many things. Like you could have so many different headsets and then iPads and phones and browser games and everything. It can get overwhelming for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of people's experiences, and they when they feel that way, then they back up,
Yeah.
um, and they say, okay, there there are too many things here, and I I don't know how to account for the things that might not be therapeutic or might not be helpful or might not be good for my client or whatnot, because I don't understand it enough to identify what those things are.
Hmm.
And so that's when people, I think, back away from it. And so I think so much of what you and I talk about is, if you understand some of the fundamentals, then of not even talking tech, you understand the fundamentals of what it is you're doing and why you're doing it in general. Therapeutically, what are you doing in therapy? What does it mean? How does change happen? What are the themes? What are the goals? What are those, all those things, whether you're a play therapist or not, and you understand those things, then so we'll put that like in a nice little container for the moment and put it to the side. And then the other is, okay, what kind of tech is out there? What kind of tech do I think is going to be of therapeutic value based on a connection now we're making from what we're talking about at the moment to the things that are in this box over here of your theoretical foundations and your understandings. So based on those things, what are some of the therapeutic goals and interventions that I think will be most valuable for my clients? And then pursue those. So you want kind of a smattering, kind of an understanding of what is it, what's play on a switch like, what's play on a tablet like, what's play on a computer like, what's play in Steam, what's play in virtual reality, anything under XR, like what does that even all look like? What are the components there? And do they meet the therapeutic needs that I feel like my clients have? And pursue those. If it's to be, let's just say I have a client who I really believe would benefit from some sort of team play, of being cooperative toward goals, toward figuring something out, finding something, putting something together, or whatever that might be. And there's an interaction that I want to happen in order for that. I can think of probably hundreds of games on different platforms, different types of hardware that would meet that need. That's pretty global, because if you have something that's multiplayer, most often it's going to have those components in it. And then you can go from there and what your client's needs are. If it's that I want them to be able to create an environment and exist in that environment and interact with it and experience it, then I'm going to start to narrow down what programs are available and what kind of environment I want them to be in. It might be that I want it to be an other, that I want there to be a separation between themselves and the thing, kind of like when we talk about traditional sand tray, that you're standing up, the tray is an other and you're interacting with it and the things you're putting into it. If we're in virtual sand tray in the VR headset, you are, you have the ability to be up and above, but you also have the ability to be down in the tray and walking amongst the creation that you've
Right.
made and interacting with it. And that's a very different experience. Which one of those experiences do I think is going to benefit this particular client with this particular needs that client has? And that may vary session to session, that may vary within session, that might vary all over the place depending on what their needs are. So those are just two examples, but that could be what you create in like a drawing program on your tablet versus going into Tilt Brush in VR and actually creating the world and standing in it,
Mm-hmm.
versus like nature tracks where you can go into a preset environment, but then add different components that contribute to the environment that is important to you at that time. Lot of different directions that can be gone in, which, as we've spoken about so many times, can be overwhelming, that there are so many directions. But how exciting is it that there are so many directions? Because then we can really customize in a prescriptive way these interventions and interactions that we're having with our clients.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's what I was thinking too when I was saying it's another level of immersion, and by extension, it's just another tool, to to be able to provide to people, because like you said, it is in the prescriptive way in that we're just wanting to have a vast tool belt of various different interventions for things that we feel will help the client, you know, um, work towards their goals. And that's all we're trying to say is that the more tools that we have, the better it is, right? It's kind of like I always remember growing up, and it's like my dad was always wanting like all these tools, and my mom would always kind of look at him like, you're never going to use that. um, but it was like, well, you never know when I will, right? It kind of cracks me up with that, but it's true. It's just that some tools are going to do a better job for specific situations rather than having just a generic set of tools and hoping that one of the generic tools will do the best job it can for like a niche situation. Um, and if I have the ability, I was thinking about this, not long ago, but just how specific clients and how there were certain things that they would just connect with, like how like if when it was in the room, I could see a certain level of engagement, and to me as a therapist, I was like, I'll go and get that every single week. I'll go buy those materials every week, because I want to really provide the best experience for this client. And so I think about that a lot, in terms of especially when it comes to digital tools and knowing that, as we've said a lot, but the world, and the people that are growing up are involved in digital like every single day. It's not something where it's like, oh, we just use it for school or we just use it for work. It's, they use it for entertainment, they use it for communication. I mean, there's so many uses of digital applications in our everyday life that it just makes sense to have that also available for our clients in terms of, a tool or an intervention in our sessions.
Again, so many different directions. Like,
I'm sorry, you've been wanting to read this post, so I apologize. Go ahead.
oh, no, 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 no. I still have it, but I just I feel like this conversation is so ripe and rich and so many directions to go in. And it's making me think about, so a few weeks ago, I became part of a group that is talking about AI, um, particularly the generative AI like ChatGPT and all of that. I know we've talked about that somewhat recently, can't remember which week. Um, and I can see this group that it's very, very active. We have a WhatsApp group, and people from all over the world are contributing, and it can have easily 100 messages in a day of people posting things and bringing different topics and whatnot. And one of the things that I found was really fascinating, so I'm diverting to a different quote, and I actually took a screenshot of it because I didn't want to lose it. Somebody said that AI was a tool, and there was a lot of back and forth about arguing about whether or not that was a true statement. But I thought I'm going to pull out this piece, and it says, AI is indeed a tool, but like an axe, it can be used by the tool user to build a shelter or to murder someone. And that would suggest it is not AI, but humans who can choose what to do with it. And the reason why I'm bringing that up in this context right now is because there are pros and cons. We've talked about that in terms of anything to do with technology, hardware, software, interaction, balance. Like, we talked about that in so many different ways over the time that we've been having these conversations. So all that stands. And tools can be used in different directions, just like the axe that was just talked about in that quote I just read. And so knowing full well that there are multiple sides, these are multi-layered, dimensional, and faceted concepts and content that we're talking about. If we're talking about the use of anything in a therapeutic setting, we need to look at all of those. And we also need to decide whether or not we can pursue and achieve the therapeutic value that is the goal. We're not just using something cool to use it.
Mm-hmm.
There's purpose behind it, there's foundation behind it, there's knowledge and expertise, comfort, competence, all those things that go into it and that are behind it. When you have those things defined, then the tool you're going to use is going to become more apparent in its appropriateness. I would like to think, to bring it back to the Apple headset, I would like to think that there are components of this headset that we can use in a powerful way for our purposes, which is mental health. And this brings me to many conversations that I've had in the chief psychology officer job that I had with this startup that has the startup ended up having some difficulties and ended. but the job itself, the work we were doing was amazing, groundbreaking, really, and I'm sad not to be part of that, and hope to do that again with another company. Um, but a lot of what we were doing was trying to figure out how to improve the user experience, not and we were doing this with a combination of psychology and neurology, and that goes out, has many fingers and legs and toes and everything else extending out into what could potentially be concerns. So I'm not dismissing any of that. I'm trying to really hone in on the limited time that we even have ever in these conversations, and limited time we have left in this one, is to say that there are components of that that I think are important for us to use for good and are really powerful when it comes to things in mental health. And so that brings me full circle back to this tweet that was then reposted onto LinkedIn. And the original tweet is by somebody named Sterling Crispin, who apparently has been part of for a couple of years. It's funny because he said, I spent 10% of my life and somebody in the comments is like, you're 30 years old, man, you're talking about 3 years. So it's just kind of funny in the way that it was. Anyway, so I'm just based on that beginning, and I'm taking some of what he's saying with a grain of salt, because whatever. But he apparently worked as a neurotechnology prototyping researcher in the technology development group at Apple on this headset, the Vision Pro. And one of the things that they were focusing on was working on detecting the mental state of a user based on data from their body and brain when they were in an immersive experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back to the axe, this could be used for not good, just like an axe can be used for murder. We're talking about an axe being used to build a house. There are concerns. I'm part of hearing about these on a daily basis, like trying to figure out how we manage all kinds of things in this realm, but focusing on mental health. And in like the project I was working on just recently, the power, if it's protected, that's the key. This is not power going to other companies, other places, to your boss, to your whatever. For you as an individual to interact with a program that understands based on your biological reactions, to understand what your needs are, and then be able to provide either an environment or an interaction or a something that is catered to you. That's phenomenal. That is science fiction becoming real world. That is, I don't have to, just like we talk about so much in psychology these days about diversity and about recognizing and working with the way a person needs information to be presented. Like, it used to be one size has to fit all, and if you didn't fit into that 68% and you were on the outskirts of any of that, then sucks to be you, you're going to have to adapt. My father went to school at a time, he was lefty, he was a left-handed person, and he was forced by school to be right-handed. Once he got out of school, like out of the, I think it was elementary school that was forcing him to do that, once he got out of that, he was able, and now he's fully left-handed and operates as a left-handed person. But what I'm saying is the environment dictated, you must be this way because this is the way we need it done. And if you don't comply, then you're out of compliance, and there are going to be consequences to that. Now, and we are certainly far from perfect in any of it, but now we have a much better acceptance and understanding of different types of diversity, and trying to be able to provide for people environments that will be best for them to learn, to interact, to grow, to process, to everything. The ability for a headset like the Apple headset we're talking about, like even the HP Omnicept that has the ability for a variety of different biomarkers and things like that, plus different add-ons that you can put on different headsets and whatnot. The power for that to assist people in even as something as simple as I'm in this interaction, my heart rate goes up, my eye gaze is and tracking is showing something, maybe back off, change the lighting, back off of the intensity of the experience, whatever. This user is not ready for that. The ability to even customize it in that way is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So this post that was made was basically saying that, and I'll just read it so I'm not just paraphrasing. A user is in a mixed reality or virtual reality experience. An AI model, so artificial intelligence, which there's a lot of controversy about whether or not AI is really an appropriate name for, but you know, it is what it is, and we've got what we've got. But in this AI models, they're trying to predict if you're feeling curious, if your mind is wandering, if you're scared, if you're paying attention, if you're remembering a past experience or some other cognitive state. And these may be inferred through measurements like eye tracking, electrical activity in the brain, heartbeat and rhythm, muscle activity, blood density in the brain, blood pressure, skin conductance, all of that. So that's the neuro part that
Mm-hmm.
comes in, combined with the psychology of what does that actually mean. And that provides an amazing opportunity in mental health for us to customize experiences, environments, growth, interventions, everything for our clients. And that is amazingly exciting to me. So the person who reposted this tweet with the comment of no way, and there was actually an expletive in there, I was like, if all the ifs are in place, if the protections are in place, when you sign like for the Quest Pro, there's a thing that you're signing, basically it's hidden. It's not in the first thing that you read, but if you click on the different links that they give you, you're basically saying that Meta can have all of your eye tracking data.
Mm-hmm.
That's dangerous. It's important that we know where this information goes, what it could be used for. This goes into the conversation of neuro rights. Neuro rights is another big area in any immersive experiences that include any sort of biodata and biomarkers. It's really critical. But if we can get those things in place with some safeties, nothing is absolute. But if we can do that, the potential for this to be powerful in mental health is mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it always comes back to, for me, it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always sit there and just laugh because it, everything is just a repeat of what society has always been.
Yeah.
Everything, is can be, anything good can be used bad, right? I mean, look at like our country when we first started building all of our military and all the great things, and to be able to stop dictators and things like that in world wars, and then look at how it can also be used very poorly. I mean, it's just there's so many examples of that throughout time. Social media can be awesome, it can also be very terrible and has been very terrible in certain ways. I think ultimately what a lot of these things come down to, and I think just tying it into what you were saying to wrap up our time, is just this idea that all of these things come down to the user having the power, but you need to be educated to know, like you said, what you're signing away when you use these products, and are you comfortable with this, and things of that nature. If you are, then that's your right, and that's the thing that makes me most excited. And I think also tying that into a mental health field, like No one is saying that you need to bring in these, digital consoles or VR headsets or, and play these particular games and things of that nature. But you get to control which ones you want to bring in, if you want to bring in, what you want to use. And a lot of that comes down to, your education, of you looking at it, like you were saying, know why you're using it. And so I think that's going to be the biggest thing that we'll have to continue to keep educating people on, especially in our field. When it comes down to utilizing different technological means within therapy.
Mhm. I think it's very exciting. That's why my
Yeah.
response was so different to that person. Um, and that person may have, and that's part of the reason I'm not naming the person, is because I don't know the context of their response, and it may be that they're concerned about the neuro rights and where this bio data is going to go and all of that. But for me, if the ifs are in place, that's just like the biggest statement I can make. The ifs need to be in place
Yeah,
of the protections for mental health.
absolutely.
I think in general they need to be in place, but for mental health, absolutely hands down. But if we have environments, we build environments that have those ifs in place and the protections in place, it's amazingly exciting times.
Yeah.
And for those reasons, I want to get my hands on one of those headsets. So just like I started out this conversation saying that I saved up for 5 years, 4 years, sorry, for my Disney cruise we just went on, I, I'm gonna have to start saving up
That's
because
right.
I want I want to evaluate the experience, and if it is has the value is there to warrant the increased price for the therapeutic components, I'm all in.
That's right. And just because we have to, quickly get off as we're out of time, but
Yep.
our next streaming uh, session is going to be probably in July and probably after the 4th of July, just because I'll be out,
Yep.
flying out Wednesday and I'll be gone and coming back in July. So look forward to seeing you all then and hope you guys have a good time while in between us being able to stream.
Yes. So I have that down as Sunday, July 9th.
Yep,
That we
sounds good.
will meet. I will actually be out of town that day, but I am planning on meeting with you from where I am.
Okay.
So either way, it'll be a green screen, right? So it won't
That's
matter.
right. All
All
right,
right. Well,
we'll
I
see
hope
you
you have a
later.
great time, and we'll see you guys in a month.
All right, bye.
Okay.